Today we go to war. Nancy, having survived a near tarring and feathering, actually not the case because you're so kind to your constituents. Madison, I bet you'll lock down the door for a second. Go sit outside, greet everyone.
What, everyone?
Oh, man. Hey, we will need some colors today, so whether it's you want your own or you need to get a couple from here, just a variety of.
Oh, sorry. You seen that, right?
What?
You didn't see that?
Wow.
Go away.
Oh, red. That's a good start. Hi-oh, greetings, welcome. That's cute. Hey, we'll need some colors today, so whether you have your own or you want to get some from a bucket there. If they're colored pencils, go ahead and get them sharpened.
Thank you.
That'll drive me crazy later. Oh, you still got it. Greetings, welcome. Let's go to war. My class, you want to go to war. Darn it. First up, there's three of these. You did not give good instructions. Hey, we will need some colors today. I think I told pretty much everyone in here. So if you have your own, that's great. If you need some, go ahead and get, all the colors of the rainbow, whatever. I want you to post up right here. Don't let the flag get drowned. What do we need to push? What do we need to do on purpose? Just making sure it's on purpose. Is Haley here today? No. She's out. Twin. Left.
Round it up.
Right there. Like right at your seat.
That's pretty cool.
We need some colors today, so if you have your own, or you can use some of mine. If they notice on your desk, we need colors today. If you have your own, that's good, or you can use some of mine. All the colors of the rainbow. You got a little bit of art. Like you go to Chili's, you get red and green, maybe just a little bit more than just red and green. Red, white, and blue would be a good color. And Jacqueline's is you hear that?
She was in first block.
You got checked out yesterday.
Oh, that's what.
You get what?
Come on in. We're gonna need some colors today. Ladies just coming in. If you have your own colors, that's fine. Or you can grab some of mine. If you need to sharpen pencils, go ahead and do it now. That'll drive me crazy later. Hey, I said, hey, I'm an adult, so I'm not gonna talk to the video. Go glass. I said my screen the other day. Hey, I'm not gonna talk to the video, because I'm an adult.
Yeah, because you got on my hand last time we did.
Yeah, and I watched the video. That's all.
Good. Glad you know.
Those of y'all just coming in, I said we're gonna need some colors for today. So if you have your own, that's great. Or if you need some of mine, I got them up here. Today we go to war. Roy G. Biv. Don't keep asking me how many colors you need. Roy G. Biv. Red, orange, yellow, green, indigo. Alright, I think we're all here. We're situated. I'm ready out of state. I'll say one more time, we need some colors today. So if you have your own, that's great. You need to get some from a pile there, that's great. Roy G. Biv would probably be a good place to start. 3 minutes. Does not matter if it's a marker or a highlighter. It's gonna be a creativity kind of thing, not that big. I ran out of rules about it. Just
You got that whistle.
They're not like.
The path is
I ran out of space. Okay.
Let's hand it.
I gotta say, my notes look way more fun than these math notes y'all have out right now.
Oh my gosh.
I ran out of space.
Hey. That was one that was in here. If they had a bad I was like, that's only six. Yeah, just like you know, you share a lot.
Like I said, but you know, side by side comparison, my notes are clearly more.
Yeah, yours.
All right, I'm passing out notes for the next couple of days.
What'd you do?
I knew what it is.
And yeah, let me know if you snuck in without me giving you. All right, let's finish the sharpening, and then we'll get it going.
Hey, no Dollar General stuff over there. You know what? No one sits in this bed, guys. Just I do have a quick one. What was the purpose of stapling those notes together? Hey, could I go home? Hey, I have a question. What was the purpose of stapling all of these together? Like, is that for like study? I just not feel like giving it to you. I didn't know, like, that's called the, well, I'm just wondering, like, so. I don't mind, I was in
Even if it's 2 days of class, it's the same class.
Hey, bestie, it's cold.
All right, let's get situated about 1 more minute. Sharpening colored pencils. But I do appreciate y'all doing it at the beginning of class. Do it drive me crazy in the middle of class.
Can I have the wood?
Hey, where's my bestie?
Right here. They knew you were.
So if you're taking a look at your notes, everywhere you see a big circle, you are going to be sketching something that helps you memorize, helps you remember what that chunk of notes is about. And what it really amounts to is the big battles of the American Revolution. That's why you have colors today. Maybe understand just a little bit more. As you look at your notes, you see that big bold circle. I'm going to tell you what to sketch. Now, your creativity, sky's the limit, right? I can't tell you what good art looks like. That's up to you. But I'm going to give you a little reminder as to help you know what little item can help you remember each of these particular battles. Abby, right hand. You get notes? Huh?
I got one.
Who else didn't get one? We were all up and around. All right, phones, computers, it's time.
What if I don't have an indigo? Get one more.
Who else didn't?
Is it okay if I don't have indigo? Like, I think I might have one. What is it? Right
there.
I have indigo.
We good. We good.
Oh, I thought there was something else.
All right. Around, sit on the computer for me. Hey, did you write notes? Pass the notes. What do we have here? Okay. Why are you passing love notes to my class?
Oh!
Look at this.
Hey, yo.
Look at this.
You've done this before.
Everyone does this.
Oh my gosh.
What do we have
Made
here?
everyone go.
What do we have
Guys,
here?
I know what that is.
Gage, you're gonna be accountable for this.
It's a breakup line.
Dear KG, that's cute. You guys use nicknames?
Okay.
I'm not sure how to start this letter,
They just flirting with
but I
kids in
feel we
class.
need to talk. That's not gonna go well. I
Okay,
feel we need
break
to
it
talk.
up.
Is this personal, Gage? I don't want to haze you in the middle of class.
I don't even know what that is.
I've been thinking about us a lot lately. Things used to be so great. It was like we were MFEO. Is that a TikTok term?
Wait, hold on.
MFEO.
Made for each other.
Made for each other. It's like we were
Made
made
for
for
each
each
other.
other.
Marley. This is about Marley.
I mean, everyone said it was perfect. I thought we would be together forever, but things changed. Like, do you need some? This is from her to you. You need some counseling? A relationship should be give and take, but recently you seem to just take. I mean, you do whatever you want, and you don't ask me about my own feelings. I don't think you ever took into consideration my feelings when you make decisions for us. Some of the things I would like to point out specifically that have upset me in the past few months include. Oh, we about to get lit. This girl has thought it through. One, you always choose restaurants. You always choose the restaurants we go to eat at. Two, you always make me feel like I have to hang out with your family. Three, you making me feel like I'm always inferior to you. This is getting saucy. I have tried to make this work, giving you too many opportunities to change your ways. And yes, it's true that you have fixed some of our problems, but overall, you just seem to focus on changing the little stuff. You haven't made any attempt to work on some of the big personality issues. When it started with, we need to talk. I knew it was going to be bad. I've been thinking about this for a while, and while I don't want to hurt you, I think it's time we ended this. Oh, breakup letter. I mean, it's just not going to work. I need some time by myself to see what it's like on my own. You were always making me do things you wanted to do, and you never let me have my own voice. I'm sorry things didn't work out. But I gave you time to change, and you didn't. You are the one to blame for this. Sorry, but us is over. Kisses, AC.
That was the longest note I ever heard.
Oh, you look, you just did it.
Air conditioning? Sounds like the greatest breakup letter
I knew you
of
planned
all
that.
time.
You planned that.
Dear KG, who are we talking about?
King
George. Kisses AC. Who are we talking about? American Colonies. I feel like you've changed a couple of the little things, but not the big personality issues. You don't give me a chance to see what it's like to be on my own. I'm sorry, but us, US, us is over. So yeah, this is the greatest breakup letter of all time. Of all time! I'm gonna give you a chance to finish, Taylor, but this is the greatest breakup letter of all time! Declaration of Independence. Beyonce, Kanye, anybody? Declaration of Independence is what we're going to be talking about today. We are talking about the American Revolution. So we've had classes, the causes of, and that's how your notes are labeled, the causes of. We had to get ourselves there. Now this is the events of, now your notes say the American Revolution, but this couple days of class is called the events of the American Revolution, or as I like to think of it, George Washington body slamming the Brits. Let's go! Let's go. This is one of my favorite classes, okay? Like when I think American history, I definitely think the American Revolution. So I hope you're going to tuck in, enjoy where we're going with these next couple of days as well. Yesterday, we had a blast. Queen Riley's got her salutary neglect on in that pic right there. Y'all all look pretty sharp. Jency, I will forever love Jency's portrayal of a tax collector. She was as methodical as could be, but she definitely got punked by some of y'all who weren't going to pay your taxes. Erstwhile, Jacqueline's about to tar and feather twin over there who is trying to punk on him a little bit. I got a real good picture of you. It'll make its way into a future class presentation. Oh, it's not even here. Sorry. I got a real good picture of you.
My question is, what am I pointing at?
Must be the Chiefs puffs. I will also use the phrase Chiefs puffs in the future because I watched back through our video last night. You guys had way too fun with the other word. Moving right along. All right, diving right into your notes. This is what I call, so in the Army, we use acronyms for everything. There's an acronym called the Bluff. The Bluff, BLUF, stands for the bottom line up front. You ever read a letter, much like this one? You ever read a letter or an email, and it's just like ramble, and then they get to the bottom line? Well, the Bluff puts the main idea up front. So here is the Bluff of this entire class. Here's the strengths of the colonies, and they include a strong leader in George Washington. We have already seen how leadership matters. John Smith, as a single individual leader, made a big difference in Jamestown. Well, George Washington, as a single leader, he's going to make a big difference in the Revolution. Much like we talked about guerrilla warfare tactics, and that's a term we're going to talk about again today. In this case, the Americans, or the colonists is the right word to use. The colonists had familiarity with the land, whereas the British, they're coming from overseas. They don't know the creeks. They don't know the trails. They don't know the hills and the valleys. So the American familiarity with the land, that is a strong advantage. Yes, ma'am?
What do you mean by single leader?
Every now and then, an entire revolution can hinge on one person, right? Absent of George Washington's leadership, if he had not been the leader, who knows what would have shaken out. He was, you can definitely go real deep case study into George Washington, but he diffused mutinies. He rallied troops who weren't getting paid or in bad conditions, had bad clothing, bad shoes. Like his personal leadership example rallied the entire army. And if it had been a lesser man, if it had been a person who was egotistical or a person who was only concerned about themselves and not the cause, the whole thing could have crumbled. But George Washington was a key leader. Like a single leader, a key leader. Teams are good. Teams matter. I talk about teams all the time as well. But George Washington was like the single man that was
with
most.
Martha yet?
That's not okay. I'm not referring to marriage. I'm not referring to single.
I know, but now I'm thinking.
He was the
about
only. He was with Martha at the time. Yep. So again, this class is like got to be like the tip tops of some of these facts. Those of you that are interested in more, be happy to show you videos. Happy to give you articles. Happy to have that side conversation. But in terms of this class, I got to blast through some of this information pretty fast. Good thought. Good thing. Put it on the list. Why was George Washington single? Guerrilla warfare tactics, like I just said, that comes with knowing the land. And very importantly, okay, this is definitely cutting to the chase, but ultimately an alliance with the French, super important. The fact that the French, a more powerful established nation and military, joined the American cause was a real turning point overall. So this is a summary up front, the strengths of the colonies. Well, guess what? Every conflict has two sides, and every side has their own strengths. So let's look at some of the strengths of the British. They were the world's most well-trained military. They had well-trained professional soldiers. Contrast that to the ragtag militia farmers with pitchforks that kind of just were trying to defend their farm. Despite the idea that the Americans had the cause on their side, they had the motivation, they were not a well-trained fighting force at first. So the British have a well-trained soldiers, well-trained army, the world's most powerful navy. Navy ships don't just show up overnight. You can't just say, let's build a navy. Got to build a navy over a long amount of time. Ships, cannons, trained sailors. So the British had a world's most powerful navy. And they had lots of money compared to the colonies. Now, of course, this whole conflict seems to hinge on money, right? Where the whole purpose of the taxes in the first place was to recoup money or debts from the French and Indian War. But just like Haven is confused about world debt, I think a lot of people, if you're honest, are really confused about with how money works. Even though they were in debt, they were still a wealthy nation, and they had far more money than the colonies did. And there are many occasions where the colonies could not pay their soldiers. They were writing IOUs. They said, please stick with us. Please keep fighting. We'll pay you when we win. And it was the soldiers who were motivated by the cause, not by money, who eventually win the American Revolution. So if we've got strengths, what's the other side? What do we also have? Weaknesses. Let's look at some of the weaknesses. Weaknesses of the colonies. Just go ahead and flip that statement. They had little money, right? They were an upstart nation. They've been reliant on the British Empire entirely as it was. If you're going to break up from that, right? If you're going to have a divorce of sorts, well, they've got to set out on their own and make their own money. So naturally, they had little money to start with. They had fewer people. The British has the empire. The British is even hiring other soldiers from other nations to come in and fight. The Americans are that ragtag group motivated by independence. But what that means is that there's very few of them, relatively speaking. And just like I said about the Navy, usually as an Army guy, I'm all go Army, beat Navy. But if you want to win a war, you got to have a Navy. The Americans had a very small, weak Navy, darn near non-existent. They had something, but it was just, pretty insignificant. And let's just tie that into the French alliance. When the French do join the fight, what they really bring is their Navy. So that was super helpful. The British, mighty as they are, also have weaknesses. Just go ahead and kind of, colonial strengths becomes a British weakness. They are not as familiar with the land. They are coming from across the ocean. They don't know the hills, the valleys, the creeks, the trails. And as I've described several times, they have this older European open field style of battle where they marched shoulder to shoulder with their rifles. They all aimed at the same time. Now, there's some reasons for that. What's that? In a way, like a phalanx, Christy. I like that. Actually, I just come through Greek week with my world history class. We just talked about the phalanx. In a way, it was like a phalanx, that Spartan square-shaped formation. But the reason for it was, there was a reason, okay? As silly as it might sound to just go face-to-face with the enemy on the open, reason was their rifles were not very accurate. Today, I got some hunters, I got some gun guys in here. Today, a rifle fires a bullet that spins out of the chamber, and it's that rotation that makes the bullet accurate. Well, these muskets were smooth bore, not rifled. So what did that do to the bullet? Yeah, it didn't have accuracy. You had an accurate shot group of several inches instead of several millimeters. So the reason they would be shoulder to shoulder was to just volley these shots in the general direction of the enemy, hoping that they hit something. I'm going to pause right here at this point and show you a couple of battle scenes from the Patriots. If you've seen the movie before, you kind of know what's coming. But if you haven't, this is the movie is loose with history. Some of the characters, Mel Gibson's character, he's just not really a historical figure. It makes for a great story, but it is loose with history. Where the Patriot does get it right, though, is with uniforms and tactics. So we're going to be looking at, just briefly, I think it's a 6-minute clip. We'll see how far I let it go. Just to see the tactics, to see those open field tactics. And I think I've got the right clip pulled up. I think it's going to pivot to some of those guerrilla warfare tactics. So I'm showing this to you up front. If you've seen the movie, great. You get to see it again. If you haven't seen the movie, I'm showing you what we're going to talk about in these battles coming forward. So I'm kind of giving you that visualization right up front. Rashid, you want to slap the lights for me? And I'll cover that window as well. Mostly, The Patriot is my favorite movie of all time. It is 100% the reason that 6th grade David wanted to started to want to serve in the military. And if nothing else, I want to watch this movie for myself. All right, here we go.
So stupid.
One gut. There's more of that guerrilla tactics. Stay in the wood line. Ambush. Guerrilla warfare. Ambush. Here's back to that open field battle. Started open field, you saw some guerrilla warfare. This is the final battle in the movie, and it's back to that open field battle. That's a great image right there. You see what it's like.
Why doesn't every home in the U.S. have solar panels? The number one reason is not about sunlight or weather or even politics. It's actually just because most people don't know that solar is available at no cost.
Chaos. That's the word to summarize it all up.
No retreat!
All right, that moment in the movie gives me goosebumps every time. No retreat, hold the line. Mel Gibson running with the flag. So what I hope you really took out of that was, those scenes were mishmashed, and if you know the story, it definitely combined a whole lot of scenes real fast right there, right? What I hope you took out of this was the distinction between the open field battle. I tried to point that out at a key image versus the hide behind the trees, hide in the swamp, shoot and run type of guerrilla warfare. There's two very different styles of fighting. In the Revolutionary War, experienced both of those. Ultimately, the guerrilla warfare strategy carries the Americans to victory. What are some other things you grabbed out of the clip? What weapons did you see? What tactics did you see? Bayonets. Let's stick with bayonets. I heard several things. I'll get to all of you. Bayonets. That's good. That's that long, usually about an 18-inch blade that fixed to the end of the rifle. Talked about that with regards to World War I as well. But think about it. If it takes 60 seconds to shoot and reload, if you need some immediate action, you're going to want a long pokey thing at the end of your rifle as well. So bayonet warfare, bayonet charges, really brutal, really bloody, probably really contributed to the trauma that people experienced in war, because it'd be one thing to shoot someone from far away, but you're in close with the bayonet, does something to your headspace. What other weapons did we see?
Like something that looked like a
I
machete.
can't think, because how do you die and throw a gun up and the dude just poof, catches it and kills somebody?
That's a little Hollywood moment there, right? Oh, have you seen the movie before? Oh man, that man. So what Rasheed referred to, that man is the Reverend. He's actually the town preacher.
Hey, look.
He leaves his pulpit to go join the militia, and in that moment, yeah, he got shot, and it is that perfect slow motion where he throws his already loaded weapon to our hero Gabriel, who grabs it, cocks it, boom, shoots the villain. And if you know the story, you know that's not the end of it. What other weapons did we see? I heard some voices over here. What's that? The bomb things, cannons, yeah, cannons and mortars. So some people, their job was to be even farther back from the front lines. Today we call that artillery, field artillery, right? They launch the cannonballs far into the distance. There's a variety of cannonballs. They were all designed to chop them into pieces. Okay, so whether you fired one cannonball or there's a type called grape shot, which is almost like BBs or a shotgun shell, and it would just send little hot shards of metal all through the air. Whole point of it was to cut them into pieces. What animal was involved in the battle scenes you saw? Yeah, so that is called cavalry. Men on horseback what advantage would they have over a foot soldier? Height. Harder to stab them because they're up there. Harrison, what'd you say? Faster is the big one. Yeah, they can move faster, significantly faster. Be it over the course of a day, they can move many miles farther, or in the battle itself, they could charge harder and faster. So horses, those who had horses, and it wasn't just like pack animals. These animals had to be trained. They had to be calm. They had to know what it was like to be under fire. So that goes back to the Americans being untrained and the British force being very trained. So they had an advantage with the cavalry, the horse cavalry. You saw several things there. I hope that's a good visualization as we continue to talk about some of these battles. All right, we have walked ourselves to the first battle. We're going to finally shoot at something. And this is at Lexington and Concord. These two names are two different towns, but you'll pretty much always hear them together. Okay, it'd be like saying Alma and Nichols. That's about how close these two towns were. Alma is its own town, Nichols is its own town, but in history, Lexington and Concord are always going to be paired together. Okay, they're always going to be married because it was one battle that was fought at two locations, kind of like bang bang. Because here's the story of what happened. This is April 18th, 1775, the evening of. This is where we get the story of the famous Paul Revere's Midnight Ride. What do you know about Paul Revere's Midnight Ride?
The British are coming.
The British are coming. The British are coming. He's shouting it from horseback around the countryside. He's riding towards Lexington, riding toward Concord. He is the single individual responsible for warning these townships.
Single individual. It was actually multiple people.
Very true, Christy. So the story we get told is, and the reason you guys know this story is because it was written into a poem, a very famous poem in the 1860s. Gosh, 1775.
Yeah, who found that
1860s.
paper?
Yeah,
Do you want to know why you remember Paul Revere by himself? It's because of this poem from the famous poet Henry Wadsworth Longfellow. He writes The Ride of Paul Revere. And he writes Paul Revere as a central character, actually as the only character. He gallops through town, casting out his message into the void of the night. People come to, here's a couple pictures here. Hey, Paul Revere, go on your ride. He's shouting to those in their nightcaps and gowns, the British are coming, the British are coming. Because he has advanced forward of the British troops, he is able to provide warning, and these towns are ready for battle. That's what this poem would have you believe. Here's the actual true story. Okay, you gotta, and I can give you all the sources, but just kind of trust the story I'm telling you. If you wanna see the sources, I can show them to you later. Paul Revere was a part of the machine that was the warning system. He was one son of liberty. Okay, he was important. He was a member of the team. He did that engraving about the Boston Massacre.
He was a son of liberty?
He was a son of liberty. Therefore, he is a
terrorist.
Right? Remember, independence is not won with feathers and toilet paper. You can't just go toilet paper someone's house and call it good. Sometimes you got to tar and feather them. Just saying. Independence is not won easily. It's not won easily. Let me tell my story. Paul Revere and many others were a part of this ride that warned the countryside. They did get the alert that the British were moving towards Lexington. The reason the British were moving towards Lexington was to capture a munitions a house that was full of weapons and ammo. You might say they were confiscating the guns, which might be why the Second Amendment is so important to Americans today, right? The British were going to confiscate weapons and ammo, take away the militia's firepower, and if the militia doesn't have their firepower, they can't fight the British. Again, that's why Americans really value the right to bear arms today, because we can protect ourselves. So all that to say, Paul Revere and several others ride outward. Paul Revere is actually captured, detained before his ride is complete. He never gets to the point of communicating the message all the way to Lexington. He is detained for several hours. Now, he's not thrown in prison. He doesn't go to jail forever, but he is detained, and he is not the one responsible for getting the message to Lexington and Concord. I'll just say all that to say that what you've been told sometimes in history, or that nice, cute little poem that you guys learned once upon a time, is not always exactly the whole history. Paul Revere was a part of the Midnight Ride, but he is not the central figure that actually completed the whole ride or warned the whole countryside. One more thing, I'll throw this little nugget at you. Haven, what did Paul Revere shout from his horseback ride? The British are coming is what the poem says. You want to know what he probably more accurately said?
What?
Because the colonists saw themselves as British, it would not make sense for him to say the British are coming. That's like saying the Georgians are coming, the Americans are coming, right? Because that is something we already identify as. He most likely said the regulars are coming. The redcoats is possible because they were a part of the military, but he probably said the regulars are coming, and that would have alerted everyone to know that the army was on.
All right, well, why are we?
But I know it's a real
watching
famous phrase, the British are coming, the British are coming. It's a song, it's a band, all that stuff. But he probably more accurately said the regulars are coming. So let me pick up there. Let me continue there. What do I got here? That was April 18th. That was the night of the ride. April 19th, 1775 is the day of the battle. Lexington and Concord, there's the two small towns outside of Boston. We know that Boston and Massachusetts, this is like the seat of the revolutionary spirit, the starting point of many of these revolutionary ideas, home of the Sons of Liberty, the Adams cousins, Patrick Henry, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So Lexington and Concord are just outside of Boston. Remember, coming off of the First Continental Congress, the big warning to all the colonies was to prepare for what? To prepare for war. Make preparations for a military attack by the British. Well, that's exactly what these Bostonians had been doing, right? Because they're the heart of the revolution anyway. This house was, is an armory of weapons and ammunition. And the British General Gage, he was going to go arrest our heroes, Sam Adams, John Hancock, leaders of the Sons of Liberty, and confiscate all of these weapons. Well, do you think these militiamen were just going to let that happen? Everything we've talked about so far, I hope you would say no, strong no. These guys are going to fight back. And fight back they did. What we have is going to become the first battle of the Revolutionary War. It starts right here at Lexington and Concord. What else I got? It was fought by men called Minutemen. You see that there in the quotation marks? I wanted to explain that. Why are they called Minutemen? Militia is nicknamed the Minutemen. Any guesses? Break the word apart. What's it sound like?
Because they'll be there.
That's right, because they'll be there in a minute. They were farmers. They were shopkeepers. They were bookkeepers. They were newspapermen. But in the moment of need, they would be ready in a minute. So they were called Minutemen. Today, the National Guard, Army National Guard that I'm a part of, the logo of the National Guard is a Minuteman, okay, a Bostonian-looking Minuteman. He's got a little tri-tipped hat and his rifle, because the idea is that the National Guard will be there when you need them, will be ready, not literally in a minute, unfortunately. Although, y'all might remember I got a text in this class about a year ago, had to go to Washington. Anyway, that's what Minuteman means. And a lot of the American Army was these militia, these Minutemen. Not professional soldiers, but just ragtag farmers with pitchforks who ultimately beat the most powerful army in the world. Here is an artist's rendering of what that field at Lexington might have looked like. This is a more modern recreation, so it'd have to be based off of, primary sources and reports. But I I can almost feel like I'm there. I can almost feel like I'm just like standing on the practice field. And how far away do you think those British soldiers are?
60 feet on the other side.
Not that far. We're definitely not talking miles or anything like that. Like, you could probably shout at them. You could probably see their facial features. This is how close the battle was. And here are these men just determined to not give up their weapons and ammo, determined to not be run over by the British Empire. And here we have them standing for the first battle of the American Revolution. This is a little bit of an older sketch. You can tell the artistry is a little bit older, but shows how also it might have happened. Clearly, they're hand-to-hand fighting there. You also saw some hand-to-hand fighting in the video clip. This is, I'll be honest, I don't know how super accurate this painting is, but what I love about this particular painting is these guys' facial features. These are guys I'd stand next to. These are guys I would go to war with on the Lexington Green on April 19th, 1775. And sometimes I probably wish I had a time machine to go back and stand right there on that day, see what it was like, feel what it was like. So I just really love this photo, even if it's got some inaccuracies in it, because of how determined those guys look. It makes me think about these are the guys who set our country up and fought for that original freedom. So Lexington and Concord meet the Redcoats in a very brief skirmish, and this starts the war. Now what happened was that a single shot rings out, somewhat similar to the Boston Massacre. We already talked about that. When one shot comes out, what happens next? Game on, right? Now, the British in historical writing, in journals, in orders that you can analyze the actual text of, neither side claims that they shot first. The British say that their soldiers had orders to not fire. The Minutemen, they were flat out matched. Like, let's be honest, they probably didn't want to fire first. They're probably just trying to bow up and look like they were strong enough to hold their own. They say they didn't fire first. Did the shot come from a farmer off in the distance? Did a shot come from someone trying to be a sniper that we'll never know about? We literally don't know. But this one shot rings out, and it is called the shot heard around the world. Now, was it so loud that they could hear it all the way in Asia?
No.
Why is it called the shot heard around the world?
Because that's what it started.
What? Okay, what?
That's what started.
It's what started the war, but how did it get heard around the world?
Everybody's like, oh,
Nobody
knows. They just fought today.
The impact of it, right? This was not some small skirmish. This was not some regional conflict. The British Empire taking on their colonies in the New World. This was a worldwide event. So yeah, this one shot eventually, of course, got the speed of travel was not all that fast, but would get the message would get spread around the world. Newspapers, word of mouth, pamphlets, whatever. Everybody knew that the British Empire was at war with its colonies in the New World. And it's called the shot heard around the world. Now you should see that first big circle right next to Lexington and Concord. And what I want you to do is take your colors, and I'm going to give you a few minutes to do this. It doesn't have to be chicken scratch. Draw something that says the shot heard around the world. I recommend draw a world. Maybe you draw a bullet kind of going around the world. Maybe you draw a gunshot on the world like I depict on my screen there. But I want you to associate Lexington and Concord with the shot heard around the world. So I'm giving you a few seconds here, a minute or so, do some colors. Since it's already a circle, maybe you just draw the world like that, but draw the shot heard around the world. I'll go on to say that the shot heard around the world was at Lexington. The British troops march towards Concord. They are slowed down. They are hurt because some of them took fire and they took casualties. They go to Concord. They do the same. They're repelled at Concord. The battle is on. Okay, they were not prepared for full engagement, but they take their message back to their generals and say, "Hey, we got shot at. These colonists are for real," and that's how the war was on. Lexington and Concord, the shot around the world.
Hey,
Take a minute. Take a few
I have
minutes.
one blank, and I didn't see it up
Tell me which blank is.
It says Paul, Revere, and
Dawes.
Mhm.
Dawes.
the villages from something.
Lexington to Concord.
Mm-hmm. Wait, no.
I'll go back to it. Thank you for telling me that.
Minutemen.
So Paul Revere and William Dawes. And as I got caught up in my story, I should say William Dawes was actually the more effective messenger. I said Paul Revere is a part of a network. William Dawes, his name is kind of lost to history. So let me be the one that tells it to you. William Dawes was the more effective rider on that night. Although what we remember is Paul Revere because of that poetry.
You could say he was revered for it.
I like that, Chrissy. I like that. So smart. What was your other blank?
We got it.
Got it? I'll get through my next tiny little subsection and we'll go take our bathroom break, okay? I really do want you to kind of give your brain to this art, to this sketching, because I think it's going to help you associate the correct answer with each of these battles. And these battles, if you're not keyed in on what they are, I understand they might be hard to memorize. This battle, that battle, you know, how in the world am I supposed to remember all this stuff? But that's why I'm trying to give you kind of a fun, creative way to remember each of these particular battles.
I'm just childish and y'all just Barney in that too.
Both. Agree with that. I haven't thought of that in a long time. Ooh, I like Taylor. Taylor's is my favorite that I've seen so far. She got a shot flying around the world.
They're black.
I don't know. I bet you have legs. Look at that. I snarked at you and I still bring it to you. When I get through this next little subsection. All right, I'm going to give you about 30 more seconds of drawing without me talking. Then I will continue talking again. If you're still sketching, that's fine, but lend your ear. Yeah, so much of you sketch on your notes anyway. I think you know that. I'm going to show some notes. Talk about that. All right, I'm going to move on. You're coloring, that's cool, but do lend your ear as I move on. So at this time, okay, these Minutemen, these militias, these unorganized military units, they needed a leader. I already told you kind of the bluff, right? The bottom line up front was that George Washington was an important leader to the Revolution. We had to choose ourselves a general. So George Washington takes command in June of 1775. That first battle was in April. So April, May, June, pretty rapidly, they select a commander-in-chief. He is appointed by the Second Continental Congress. What you got?
Is this out of order? Yes.
Is it?
It's way out of order. It's like another page on. Yes, because this is the next page, but it's over here.
Okay. Well, I'm sorry for that.
Oh my jeez.
It's okay. It's just a page.
My bad. Choosing a general. That's the header. Choosing a general. I will make that change though. So you guys help me make my class better. Thank you. Why did they choose George Washington? What do you think?
Experience.
For those of you who read the second bullet point, you are correct. He had the most experience around. Where did that previous experience come from? From being a redcoat. He was a British officer. But of course, with his colonies, he left the British Army and he now sides with the Patriot cause. But he gained, reasonably speaking, he gained his experience as a British officer. So what kind of an advantage could that bring him in battle? He knows the playbook. He knows how they fight. He knows that open field battle stuff. He also knows that the Indian guerrilla warfare is more effective. So he's going to be willing to go away from that gentleman's fighting, that honorable open field battle, and he's going to take on the guerrilla warfare tactics. And then just, again, you could do a case study on George Washington. You could read whole books. Obviously, there's so much literature out there about George Washington. Just summarize it to say he was an inspirational leader. Whereas a lot of generals at the time would place themselves back in the rear of safety. If there was a hardship in camp, like if it was the winter time, they would go home and light their fire and be with their families. George Washington didn't do any of that. He was up front with his men. If they didn't have food, he didn't have food. If they were cold, he was cold. Some of his soldiers wanted to mutiny, right? We don't believe in this cause anymore. Let's get us out of here. George Washington was effective motivator, and he called off some of these mutinies. He dealt with indiscipline. Just long story short, he was a very effective leader, and we'll never know for sure. But I think it's really interesting to think, what if he wasn't the leader? Would the American Revolution have been successful? Fortunately, he was the leader, and it was successful.
I guess we'll never know.
We also, this is the last subsection. We'll go there about the break. We also had help in terms of foreign aid. When you're an upstart country, you're brand new. You don't have many people to begin with. You don't say no to the people that want to help you. So we got aid in a variety of ways, but there are some key figures. And the first one I'm going to tell you about is Baron von Steuben. He is Prussian, which is kind of an early pre-Germany. He's European from the Germanic areas. Prussia is not a country today, but that's the lineage of Prussia. It comes from Germany. He is very key in that he assisted with training Washington's armies, taking them from that ragtag group of farmers with pitchforks, turning them into a professional army. And he did this specifically during the long winter of 1777, when Washington's armies was at Valley Forge. And we're going to talk Valley Forge here specifically in a second. But I'm telling you right now, Baron von Steuben trained Washington's armies at Valley Forge. It was a hard winter. It was difficult to motivate people to train in the middle of, almost like a small ice age. But he is responsible for bringing them tactics, bringing them discipline, bringing them the head knowledge of how to be a soldier. In The Patriot, you see him in that character who wears the blue jacket, the light blue jacket. That character is not named von Steuben. He is not said to be like a single historical figure. But in the movie, he represents the foreign aid that George Washington's armies got. And you saw him briefly in the clip I showed you. He was drilling the soldiers. He said, "Ready, take aim, fire!" That represents Baron von Steuben training Washington's soldiers. I don't think I had a whole lot of blanks on that one, but it is. It's under choosing a general. I'm sorry, it's under choosing a general. Okay? But there is some. Exactly. There's not blanks, but there is some side space. You can make an indication if you feel like it.
Oh yeah, there was some stuff back. There was some stuff on the Valley Forge that went with this.
We will get and I apologize that the notes are out of order. I was kind of scrapping late last night, and clearly I didn't catch that those were out of order. You guys get all my mistakes, and then fourth block gets a better class. So thanks. Another key leader. This is the last slide before we go to bathroom. Okay. The other foreign aid came from the Frenchman Marquita Lafayette. And Marquita Lafayette, he actually came over from France at the ripe old age of 19. He's 19 years old in 1775, but he was appointed as a major general in the army. That's a 2-star general. Hey, I'm a captain. I've been in the army 12 years and I'm a captain. He was like 5 ranks ahead of my rank. He's 19 years old. It's a little bit different at the time. I'm not going to get into the military history of that, but he very quickly became a friend of Washington, a trusted advisor to Washington. Washington gave him a troop command in various campaigns. Ultimately, he led an American division at the Battle of Yorktown. Yorktown is where the surrender eventually happens. We'll talk about Yorktown in its entirety. So Marquita Lafayette, he's also notable for paying, that he came from wealth. Okay, he came from a well-to-do family in France. He really didn't have any reason to go to war. He could have just lived off of his family's money. But he believed in freedom. He believed in independence. He actually paid his soldiers with his own money. When the American colonies were, low on cash, the soldiers under his command, he paid them with his own money. So he was committed. He's a Frenchman. He's not from our colonies or our country, but he's committed to the idea of independence, and that is why we still remember him today. Towns named Fayetteville or Lafayette Any town related to that is kind of a paying tribute to Marquita Lafayette, because he was such an iconic character in the early stages of America growing and moving out west. A lot of towns call themselves Fayetteville after Lafayette, or there are a couple towns called Lafayette. That's all named after Marquita Lafayette. So pause. Let's go to Beth. Go ahead and turn to the left. Make it easy. I've been trying to decipher this handwriting. Hey, who wrote this? All right, I just can't remember. I just can't remember. Gonna have to sniff out that lipstick scent. See You good? Check there. I am not talking to the video because I'm an adult.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, I got in trouble for talking to it last. Actually looking at it.
I think trouble is a
I didn't even talk.
pretty strong word.
No, not really. Hey, why don't we act like adults and not look at the video?
Oh, is that what we said?
Excuse me.
It's probably on video, so.
I wanna be a superstar.
What's wrong with it? Hey.
Look at my
He's
herb.
gonna make me
It's just
put
not
that
even
back.
like.
That's what it's called.
Oh, you?
Hello.
Lisa. Oh.
You won't.
Bro, is this not mine?
Oh.
No, it's my buy and everything.
Hayden, put this desk back. Oh, yo.
Disney World.
Hey, that's fine.
Well, there's also two.
I love
Why didn't no one tell me?
The desk is like sitting.
Yeah.
What a guy.
Look at this dude.
He lost
Bro, what was that?
Shield. He lost a
That's the best thing I've seen all day.
I'm so glad that's the best thing you've seen all day. Look at
I'll see it.
Will you look? I'm coming back there later.
Huh? And you're having a bad day. Huh?
Wow. Guys, doesn't have.
Yeah, because I don't listen.
Yo.
With all of them?
Abby. Lynn, Peacock. Abby Lynn.
Yesterday.
There she is.
You did.
Alright, take a seat, take a seat. We got
Is this
what is going on? And why?
Harrison did it.
Hey,
perpendicular.
I'm sorry.
They did it.
It was Harrison.
Alright, well, I like fixing this.
Alright, I'll fix the one.
Oh, I got a challenge for you. You got 10 seconds to fix my desk. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3. Okay. Take a seat, take a seat, take a seat. Alright, we got some more color spots coming up. So, that'll be a bit of a brain break for you. I apologize if notes are jumping around. You guys are intelligent enough to be able to kind of look around and make sure you got the right notes. If you got a concern, give me a little half hand. I'll help you out. Okay. Moving. What? Okay. I think all right. Moving right along. So I've told you we're finally shooting at each other. The shot has been heard around the world. What is going to be the military strategy of either side? For the Americans, here's the college word, attrition. Attrition means wear them down. Hang on longer than they're willing to hang on. Remember, it's our land. Our land. I think this is the word attrition. 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 The first blank should say attrition. There's that parenthetical, and it talks about Plato. I was going to say that in just a second. Attrition means hang on longer than they hang on. Right? They're not at home. They are not in their own backyard. They're going to want to just leave eventually. If enough of them die, they get bored, they get tired, they're going to leave. Also, and this is where you see the parenthetical, the British had a very long supply line to get food, and they might be able to rely on local resourcing and food.
Supply line. Wait, how far it is?
Yeah, because home base is England, and if they wanted men, weapons, ammunition, equipment to come to the Americas, take them a few months every single time, right?
Where does this go? Because I'm not seeing it.
Yes, it goes under the Americans.
Who says
I
Attrition.
can't see
There's
how
that
to spell
there's
it.
the parentheses.
A-T-R-I-T-I. Attrition. Just how you would spell it.
All right, this is the honors class. I got to readjust for next block.
Well, we can't see it.
Not funny.
Well, you want to come right here? Come right
No, it's literally just two.
Is it the yellow?
Right.
It's the angle you're sitting at, Haven.
No, it's.
I'm sure it's not.
Yeah, I can see it.
Next, guerrilla warfare tactics. Okay, I've kind of illustrated this several times. I'm not going to talk about this one too much. Back to the idea that George Washington knew that they were successful tactics. Back to the idea that you could hide behind the trees, break contact, live to fight another day. And I showed it to you on the movie clips as well. So not gorilla, guerrilla warfare. Can we do that again? Everybody together? Everybody together? Say not. Not gorilla, but guerrilla warfare tactics. And finally, this is a strategy. Okay, this wasn't locked down just yet, but part of the strategy was to make an alliance with one of England's enemies. The big one would be the French. If we could land an alliance with the French, we have a chance to win. I already gave you the bottom line up front. It does happen, and I'll tell you how it happens here in just a second. Well, the British, they have a strategy, of course. Their first strategy is to break the colonies in half, splitting them north from south. If they could get their army kind of right at that Virginia line, the southern colonies, they are crop focused. The northern colonies, they're a little bit more industry focused. If they can't talk to each other, they can't help each other out, they can't trade food and supplies, they don't have freedom to move between all the colonies. That's how the British wanted to win the war. Cutting the colonies in half, and in the same line, blockade all the ports. So no land movement, no water movement. This is how they're going to break the colonies, try to make the colonists submit, right? This was their big strategy. So do you have that right on your notes? I know it's a little wonky, whatever.
Yeah. Whatever.
Oh, sorry, and one more. And use loyalists to divide and conquer throughout the colonies. Remember, there are some people who were not for revolution. There are some people who were still in favor of being British subjects. Since they are loyal to Britain, they are called loyalists. Okay? Is there not a third line? Just jot it. Okay. Jot it in there. 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 Am I gonna? So that's attrition, right? If I get tired of saying it before you do it, you win the war of attrition. All right, this is the strategies up front. Now we're gonna talk through 5 battles in a row. This is the big reason that I have those circles, because I'll be honest, memorizing 5 battles without having a way to understand them, it gets a little difficult. So here's the first one. The Battle of Bunker Hill happens in June of 1775. So again, April was Lexington and Concord. June is the Battle of Bunker Hill. It is it's located on a hill just outside of Boston. Sam, do I remember correctly that you visited Bunker Hill? Sam visited Bunker Hill last year and showed me some pictures.
Wait, so the British won.
It is a British victory, but it cost the British a lot of casualties. Sometimes the side that has more people die, they're not necessarily the loser. If they have more people to start with, maybe they can give up more lives. They can give up more soldiers. The Americans technically lost the battle because they were kicked off the hill. They did not hold the geography, but it cost the British a lot of lives. And because the colonists performed pretty well, because their little ragtag army performed pretty well, it was inspirational. They didn't win, but it was inspirational. Haven, what's your hand?
How much that humbled the British people? If you just lost to a bunch of nobodies, that's embarrassing. Humbled.
Kind of how I feel about Afghanistan.
Okay, so that's what I'm confused about. It's like the British. Which British? Like American British or like?
Oh, Cam, that's a great question. Since I said Paul Revere said the regulars are coming, and they all consider themselves British, you make a great point. When I say British, I mean the red coat English army. British, yeah. Now, ethnically, was everyone British? Yeah, but we're about to stop.
I'm British.
You are ethnically European, right? Your heritage comes from.
I don't know where my heritage.
I'm not going to get too deep into that one. Now, here's how you're going to remember the Battle of Bunker Hill. At the Battle of Bunker Hill, the Americans had very, very little ammunition. Hunters, when you have very little ammunition, how many bad shots do you take?
A lot.
No. Like, realistically, you go to the wood line with 2 bullets, right? And you want to bag yourself a deer. Are you going to waste one of those bullets on an 800-yard shot?
Yes.
No.
You guys are killing my story. When you have little ammunition, you don't waste your shots.
Yeah.
The Americans had very little ammunition. So the order given by the American commander was do not fire until you see the whites of their eyes. Now, Mia, open your eyeballs. I can see Mia's whites of her eyes from here. But, probably not much farther back than that. So the reason for that was, how accurate is my shooting going to be this close in. More accurate. Much more accurate. Now, a little bit of a joke here. Unfortunately, Private Charles Bug-Eyed Bingham, he did not know that the order was going to be given on that day. Do not fire until they see the whites of their eyes. So his eyeballs would be seen from way out there. Ha ha ha. Get it? Bug-Eye, there it is. Bunker Hill. Here's what I want you to draw on Bunker Hill. Draw an eyeball. Okay. Bunker Hill. Motivational victory. Do not fire until you see the whites of their eyes. I'll give you a second to do this. Make it good. Make it real good. This guy, he like, yeah, I take hot shots. It don't matter. I waste my ammunition. Whatever.
I don't.
Battle of Bunker Hill. Do not fire until you see the whites of their eyes.
I don't miss.
Technically a loss, but a motivational victory.
I missed 0 times.
Oh.
This season.
You're a little too confident. You shot me. What are you doing?
What?
Did you shoot anything?
Yeah, I shot 3.
He's getting a little upset. I think it's hard to shoot him.
Well, I
Some of you going all in on the colors. I love it.
if they would have walked
Now,
down,
who said the British had to be humble?
Why is it
They lost
going
a bunch of
down
nobodies?
like
It'd be like if you guys
It's
lost.
one of the years that's how that whole stuff was. Well, I'm gonna roll it out very short and then it'll just keep going.
There's a lot of them.
he's gonna take his side, but like,
I've had these.
Kill
I've really
don't
been through it.
even move.
I've had this since
I
7th
shot my last year in the neck.
But it's not over.
I almost,
Dang.
Well, I'm saying it.
Shot my
No,
last year.
it dropped it.
I dropped all
never
3
shot
of
a
them.
deer. I wanna shoot a frog.
Amazing that shot.
No.
You gonna break it.
None of my
No, if you
shooters
just.
should have
I think Madden's the only ones that have that.
Frogs are
No,
good.
I put them in buckets and they'll be just a
All right, another minute or so.
Everybody was subject. Like these are new to me. These are brand new.
I know.
And I stopped and talked to him. And he said, oh my gosh, you're not Hayden. He said, I know Hayden. Some people.
Another minute, another minute.
I said, yeah, I'm not gonna go.
I hate frogs. PTSD from frogs.
No, Jack. I did. I straight up. I saw my brother was outside and I saw this little boy on the side of the road. I was like, hey, Hayden. Oh my gosh. I lost my brother. What is it?
All right, I'm about to move on. If you're sketching, that's fine, but you gotta pay attention as well.
No.
And I'm moving on to the section about the Declaration of Independence. So I think that means you gotta turn your page a little bit.
Yeah.
So sorry about that. I really didn't mean to do that. All right, here we go. So, pre-declaration, we have an American patriot named Thomas Paine, and he writes, Anna Kate, since you seem to know everything already, what did Thomas Paine write? Oh, she did get it. He writes a pamphlet called Common Sense. And you could, if you're going to become a constitutional scholar, you would read Common Sense, you would break it down, you would try to debate, what Thomas Paine was trying to say in certain passages. We ain't going there, okay? I'm just telling you that Thomas Paine's Common Sense was a motivational pamphlet that stirred a lot of independence ideas in the American colonies. People who are on the fence, think about it. You ever been on the fence about something, and then another fact comes in, and you're like, oh yeah, I'm all in now. That's what it was for a lot of people. They were on the fence about the revolution. But Thomas Paine's Common Sense really tipped them. It inspired them to be on the side of the Patriots. Now, a little bit about what is a pamphlet. You guys say, we might call it a tweet. It's a little longer than a tweet, but it might be something like a tweet or a post. What's unique about a pamphlet is that sometimes these pamphlets got printed and they were actually illegal literature. They're illegal to distribute. So a pamphlet is characterized as being small, just a couple pages long. Okay, this is not common sense, but what?
Why was that illegal, but all of this killing stuff wasn't?
Great
This
question.
is really
Put it
stupid.
on the list.
No, it doesn't.
Because people in power want to stay in power.
Yeah, I
The
know.
people not in
And
power
they're
want to get in
ridiculous, and
power.
I don't
Yeah.
like them.
Let me explain pamphlet. Something cool about pamphlets. This is about accurate to the size. Okay, this is not common sense, but it's accurate to the size. If you wanted to spread your message secretively, the size of this pamphlet would make it easy to pass to people kind of inconspicuously, right? I could slip it, especially the way they wore their big cloaks and whatnot. I could kind of slip it out of my pocket and pass it to the next Son of Liberty, and it would get distributed like that. Now, Thomas Paine's common sense, it actually exploded. We might say it went viral. It went viral to the tune of selling over 100,000 copies. And not all of them were like secretive and, slid from hand to hand like I just did with Christy there. Thomas Paine's common sense is a very, very important document because it stirred the revolutionary feelings inside of a lot of Americans. That music kind of had me in a good place. So the Declaration of Independence. Now I am talking about the best breakup letter of all time. Okay, 2 kg from AC.
Wait, I have a question.
Sorry, but us is over.
See, so you said we were going to talk about 5 battles.
Yeah, we're getting there.
Okay, but why are we talking Declaration of
Because this is in order. At this point, all of this is in order. Okay, these battles and this diplomacy is happening at the same time.
Oh, it happened at the same
Right?
time. Okay.
Battle, Congress, like it's all happening at the same time. So, good question. I could have chunked it a little differently, but I wanted it to flow in order.
Okay, I didn't understand that those were so close together.
That's a great
Like,
revelation.
that's 2 days apart.
Oh, okay. So what Chandler's pointing out is that on July 2nd, 1776, Congress adopts this resolution. And in fact, on that evening, John Adams, he writes a letter to his wife, Abigail, because he wasn't single. He writes a letter to his wife, and he says, July 2nd shall be celebrated as a day of greatness. In the future, people will eat, they will feast, they will shoot off guns in celebration, i.e. fireworks. Anybody? What do we do? When do we eat, feast, and fire off guns of celebration? Yeah. Why not July 2nd?
Because
July
that's like
4th
the start of
is
it.
when it got signed. July 2nd, it was adopted, and all things considered, it was official.
So that
But on
is
July
common
4th
sense, but it being signed is the Declaration of Independence.
No, sorry, let me clarify. 2 separate things. Common sense is a pamphlet. Common sense is like it stirred the patriotic feelings.
Okay.
It leads to Congress formally writing the Declaration of Independence. That's an important clarification. Very important clarification. The primary author of the Declaration is who? Thomas Jefferson. Now, he was on a committee of 3, Jefferson, Franklin, and Adams.
I've seen this photo.
But, yeah, you have seen this photo before in my class previously.
What was John?
That was the biggest signature.
John Hancock, why is he famous?
Yeah.
So I'll tell you a little side story. John Hancock is the biggest signature here. And John Hancock said he was going to sign it big enough that King George could see it without having his glasses on. I'm going to make sure he knows John Hancock's name is on this Declaration of Independence. Pretty bold, pretty brave. Because think about it. Every single signature here, what were these guys saying about themselves?
What's it called? Treason.
I'm a traitor, right? Technically speaking, to England, they became traitors. Right now, of course, we think they're patriots. We think that they're great Americans. But at the time, they became traitors. And remember what Patrick Henry said? If this be treason, let's make the most of it. Benjamin Franklin said, we're either going to hang together, hang separately or hang together. So they're basically saying, let's stick together once we sign this document. And that's why it was important. These ideas were not new. But writing it down and actually writing it down and presenting it to King George, that's what was new. Which one?
Why was he such a big deal?
Which one?
John Hancock.
So he's a member of Congress. His claim to fame is writing his name really large.
Okay.
But, any of these guys, maybe we should study all of them better, right? But unfortunately, some of their names are just less famous and there's only so much history you can actually study. But John Hancock's big claim, I suppose the takeaway is if you want to be remembered, write your name really big. And if you guys want to get grades on your papers, you should write your name on it at all.
Sign your John Hancock.
Sign your John Hancock, that's right. And that's why it's a phrase, Chandler. Sign your John Hancock because it's kind of synonymous with signature. All right, famous painting there. Thomas Jefferson writes the Declaration of Independence. He's influenced by what kind of thinking?
What did you say?
Light bulb over my head. Thomas Jefferson's influenced by what kind of thinking? We talked about this yesterday. Enlightenment. Enlightenment thinkers influenced Thomas Jefferson. Yeah, that's a little extra, little bonus. And then July 4th is the famous day because this is the day it was actually adopted. This is the day that is written on the document itself. So adopted on the 2nd, actually written on the 4th, and that's how we get July 4th over July 2nd.
And this is supposed to declare our independence.
I'm listening.
This has had a couple of months for this paper to get sent.
Oh, absolutely. Yes. So Sanaa says, I mean, how did everybody know about this thing? Took a long time for the message to make it overseas. Took a long time. Every communication was delayed. None of these communications happened right away. So yeah, it makes a great point. And every now and then in history, certain battles got fought even after the treaties were signed because it hadn't been communicated to all the armies in the field. Yeah. A little bit more here. Again, not all Americans were in favor of this Declaration of Independence. I know we like to think that every single American was in favor of the revolution. That's not the case. Many Americans were divided. Some crowds were celebrating. Other crowds were saying, this is bad. We should remain loyal to the crown. Some would say they didn't want conflict with the king, all that kind of stuff. But here's a very important distinction that is made in the Declaration. These are no longer colonies, they are states. And that's why I think that on my breakup letter, when they signed it American Colonies, AC, I think that is slightly inaccurate. Now I know it's just a cheeky breakup letter. But realistically speaking, they no longer saw themselves as colonized by England. They saw themselves as free and independent states. Yes.
So they just signed this paper and they're like, boom, we're independent.
Well, you got to fight for that piece of paper. You got to fight for the idea. But yeah, they didn't say it, Haven. They declared it.
You don't
It's not
have
like
to
they just
say
said it.
You don't have to.
I say it. I declared it. I do declare. All right. Now we're getting back to these battles. So we are in sequence, okay? And that's why I jumped from battle to declaration. Take yourself to December 1776. I've always said that 76 is that really iconic year. That is because of the Declaration. Well, find yourselves in the trenches on Christmas Eve of 1776. It wasn't actually the trenches. That's World War I. But what you have here is a bold, brave, and daring leader who decided to conduct a surprise attack on Christmas Day. Why do you think he decided to attack on Christmas Day? Because everybody thought that he wouldn't attack on Christmas Day. Every now and then, it's nice to have a cute little story about the Christmas truce of 1914. But George Washington wasn't that guy. He wasn't trucing on Christmas. He was going to attack on Christmas. So what I want you to do in this circle is draw a Christmas tree. Washington crosses the Delaware, and then he goes on to fight the Battle of Trenton. I've got a couple of words about the Battle of Trenton. But what it actually is attacking a Hessian force. Washington crosses into Pennsylvania. He surprises Hessian mercenaries who are hired by the British. Again, this is a Germanic type people. We don't have the country of Germany just yet. But they are soldiers for hire. They are not for either cause. They don't care about the British. They definitely don't care about the Americans. They're just soldiers of fortune, soldiers of hire. So this is who Washington is attacking on Christmas night. He surprises them. It is an American victory. And for all the emotional reasons, right? They won the battle. It was Christmas. They had just declared independence. It was a major, major inspirational victory for the Americans. So draw yourself a Christmas tree because this represents Washington's crossing of the Delaware and the Battle of Trenton on Christmas 76. Hessian, Hessian. I fought with the colors on this, guys. I'm sorry. I tried to pick the best color for some of these backgrounds, but kind of tough. Hessians, Hessian.
And we're supposed to draw a Christmas tree on this one.
Draw a Christmas tree. So the circle is for crossing and Trenton. It's the same battle. He crosses the Delaware. He fights the Battle of Trenton. And you need to associate that with Christmas. Because by gosh, no rest for the weary on Christmas. We're going to attack instead. I'll show you this. The famous painting is what you see here. Okay, this is called Washington Crosses the Delaware. This is a wildly inaccurate painting for a whole lot of reasons. Start with the boat. Washington did not have rounded boats. He crossed on flat boats. I'll move to the clothing. I could, cherry pick a whole bunch of different reasons, but the clothing, and you know what? The author or the artist, he wasn't trying to make a totally accurate painting. He was trying to make a representative painting. So on the far right-hand side, you have an American frontiersman. Up front, you have a Native American holding the flag. That's actually future President James Madison, who was a lieutenant in Washington's army. So he's specifically represented as well. The red coat, the gray coat, the blue coat, those are all different representations of people who are in Washington's army. A lot of people look at this painting and they think, wow, this is exactly how that happened. And that's just not true. It's a nice painting. It's a very historic painting, but it's not fully historically accurate. More accurately would be this painting, because Washington had flat-bottom boats. On these flat-bottom boats, they carried their cannons. These men were packed in like sardines, right? There's a whole lot of them on each flat-bottom boat. They did pole their way across the frozen Delaware River. It was a little more, the ice depicted here is more accurate. A little bit flatter, not quite like these Titanic icebergs in this other painting here. These guys have oars instead of the flat poles. So all that to say, a nerd like me really likes to get into the details there. This is a more accurate painting of what it would actually look like for Washington to cross the Delaware on that night. One more little side story about crossing the Delaware. Washington sent out a message to his whole army. He'd write a letter and it'd get distributed, 5 or 10 times. And this letter that was read to his army on that night, his final signature, his final sign-off was victory or death. Like, fellas, we gonna win or we gonna die trying. Victory or death. And, of course, he goes on to fight the Battle of Trenton. They win, and it is that major emotional victory. So I'll give you another minute here to tidy up your Christmas tree and finish out that section before we move on to Saratoga.
Okay. Would this be a good time to ask you a question?
Of course it is. Trained the army at Valley Forge.
Okay, and then
Not quite.
Landon, what does that say? Where?
Well, okay,
After
that
Washington
is,
did the crossing of.
they joined forces with us and they provided much needed military support. But I will elaborate in just a second. So yeah, I haven't. Just give me a second for French name. I mentioned it, but I'm also gonna. Von Steuben was at Valley Forge. He turned the army into a professional military force. Lafayette was the one who paid troops out of What? Sons were more military, and daughters were more like boycotts and making clothes and making clothes. Ladies' work, if you will. Hessian, it is Hesssian. I'll say it again. It was a German type group of people. They are from present-day Germany, but Germany wasn't a country just yet. So ethnically speaking, they are called Hessian, and they were soldiers for hire. They were not British. They were certainly not American. They were just going. They were going wherever they got paid, and many of them died because of their job. All right, we tidy on notes. Some of you guys are asking me side questions on vocab. That's great. I'm super happy to always give you some answers or help you along the way. Moving on to Saratoga. Maybe you think of a girl named Sarah dressed in a toga. I don't know what works for you. Saratoga is a city in New York. Battle of Saratoga is actually 2 battles fought in the fall of 1777. Okay, so we walked ourselves 75, 76, now we're 77. September and October. The second battle, the second skirmish battle is what was a decisive American victory. This is called the turning point in the war. And we are going to continue to analyze turning points in other wars. Civil War, World War II. It's that like the turning point battles are what really changes the whole tide of the war. Saratoga is the turning point because it inspires France to join us in a treaty of alliance. The French, they were kind of waiting to see if we were a real army. Is this independence movement really going to take hold? When we showed that we could win at Saratoga, the French finally agreed to join forces. Started sending troops, ultimately sent their navy, which some of you were just asking me about. It all started at Saratoga. Side fact, Benedict Arnold is the hero of the battles of Saratoga. But what do you know Benedict Arnold for?
Traitor.
Being a traitor, the traitor of traitors, the most traitorous traitor of all time, because he was going to hand over a particular fort to the British, West Point, actually. Well, before he was the traitor, Benedict Arnold, he was actually the hero of Saratoga. He felt like he didn't get the recognition he deserved, led him and his ego to eventually hand over the fort, or try to hand over the fort, when he became the traitorous Benedict Arnold. But interesting little side fact is that he was the hero at Saratoga. Not going to go too deep here, just kind of show you that the American forces were coming from the south, the British forces were coming from the north, and they met in the middle at Saratoga. That's why Saratoga was the battleground. Don't get too deep onto that particular graphic right there. And what I want you to draw is a turning arrow, because it's the turning point.
That's smart.
Turning arrow, turning point, whatever that looks like for you, a turn signal, a blinker, turn of any sort. Saratoga is the turning point of the American Revolution. Of course, you got to associate that with the why. The why is it the turning point? Because the French joined the war.
Dang. Sorry.
Wait, I can't
I'm
see.
sorry, I'll put it right back up.
I can't see it.
Anybody else? Anybody else can't see it when I took it off the screen? Anybody else?
I
I'm just glad some of you knew I did that on purpose.
Sure.
Just get a little brain break. It lets you do a little artwork along the way. Helps my voice out. I was weak last night. I was done talking for the day. Hey, where'd your tennis racket go?
You have it.
Oh, she knows. She knows.
Oh,
She knows. Sorry.
No, she knows. I watched my tennis racket.
Marley's dangerous for her tennis racket. She don't need to walk in the hallway.
Why do you have a tennis racket, Mr. Swanson?
Because I didn't want to step on it.
Because he plays
I knocked it
tennis.
over, but I didn't want to
That's
step
his
on it.
hobbies.
Put him on the
Mason was bouncing a tennis ball on the couch last night. She was practicing.
We watched
Oh,
her.
you did?
Yeah.
Stalker.
That's scary.
No, we just got there early and they were practicing. Yeah.
Oh, I thought you watched her practicing.
On the
Like,
couch.
was she sending you videos or something?
No.
Yes.
We watched her.
All right, about another minute on your turn arrow. Okay, some of you are going all in, coloring the whole circle. That's great. Some of you are drawing a simple turn arrow. That's fine too. Some of you see that we got the boat. We're chipping away some vocab too. That's great. Well, if you have that out as I talk, I think that's a good way to do it. If you want to wait till I'm done with the class and then go back and make sure you write down all I've talked about, I think that's fine too.
That's
Hey, what
fine.
time?
Fine too.
It's time for
It's time for you to get a watch.
You need to get a better job.
It's time for you to get a better comeback.
Marley, you just
Back
use
at
the
you.
same.
You use the same concept.
All right, about 30 seconds. 30 seconds on your turn arrow.
1, 2,
The back.
3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11,
Alright.
Your finger pressed in the
It's right here. 12:54.
You want me to come? 12:55 actually. I don't owe you anything.
And thanks to Hayden counting all 30 seconds, we are going to talk about the Articles of Confederation, and then we're going to pause. Okay, we're going to pause for the day. Okay? I didn't know how far I'd get in this particular class. Now I know. I got my little pause point. We will pick it up tomorrow after this chunk right here. So again, so now we're in order, right? Battles, Congress, battles, Congress. All of this is happening at the same time. There, yeah, it is. It's the bottom.
It's on the second, the back of the second page.
Declaration.
It's actually back.
I super apologize for that. I clearly messed something up, but thank you for figuring it out. There we go. Articles of Confederation. Check this out.
Right, Joe.
It is our first failed form of government. Did you know Americans could fail?
Yeah, very much so. Yeah. Actually,
Sometimes we think we are so perfect that we couldn't possibly have any failures in our background. We have a whole failed form of government, and it is called the Articles of Confederation.
Yeah, that one was.
Now, the thing about the Articles is, at least it was something. Okay, we're in the middle of a war. We're a brand new country. We had to get something written down and agreed upon as organized. And what this something is the Articles of Confederation. However, big problem is how weak it was.
Yeah.
There was no president. There was no executive. They could not tax. They could not collect. They could not, just very limited power from a central government. Now, there is a reason for that. We hated having a strong central government, i.e. the king, lord over us. We were scared of strong central governance. So instead, we almost went the opposite way and said, states' rights, states' power, states will figure it out. This is the Articles of Confederation. However, there are many issues. How do you fight a war without money? How do you get money if states don't voluntarily give you money? Right. How do you finance the war? How do you pay soldiers? Lots of issues. Lots of issues. Hang on. Don't just like lose it just yet.
financing the state farm insurance.
Leads to, or I should say, here's a kind of a cutesy political cartoon to summarize it. No president, no executive, no judiciary, no taxes, no army funding, no navy funding, weak foreign policy, weak trade policy. What were we even thinking? And Mr. Articles over here is like, wasn't all bad. It was a form of government. Okay, it was a form of government. Okay, they tried. They did try. It was not fully effective. It is ultimately replaced by, somebody tell me, which comes from the Constitution. Okay? But arguably, it is. Here's my last take on that. A lot of times we look at other countries that are maybe going through turmoil. They have a change in leadership. There's been a civil war or whatever, and they start with a government. And guess what? That first government cracks. It crumbles. Afghanistan's a pretty good example, right? In the past 10 years, Afghanistan has kind of yo-yoed between several different forms of government. Guess what? So did ours. Our first form of government failed. It cracked. It crumbled. It wasn't good enough. So sometimes we think we're so perfect and we got it figured out because we've been a country for 250 years. Guess what? We didn't have it figured out at first. We had to try twice to get a constitutional government that lasted. So, punctuation mark. I will stop there. We will continue some of this stuff tomorrow. And yeah, if you need to tidy up vocab or anything like that, if you got any side questions for me, I'll be happy to answer. Don't forget to keep up with your notes and vocab, okay? Every week, you can assume it's due on Friday.
Yes, bro. I want to say yes. Hey,
Yeah.
tell her an example. Jacqueline. Boy, I like her probably keeps. That was fun. Edited a good job. And I said, no, I heard the voice. And I'm on my phone. I'm outside.
Hey, I've gotten this question 3 times, so I'll just go ahead and put this slide up. Some of you are like, who's Baron von Steuben? Remember, he trained Washington's army, helped them become a professional military force, drilled the soldiers at Valley Forge during the winter of 1777. So if you missed Baron von Steuben, here you go. I'll put it back up for you.
Where are you going, General George? I'm going to find Valley Forge.
Say bye.
Not too happy dogs.
I'm sorry.